All right, great. Thank you, Elijah. So I'll open the planning board meeting, Town of Bridgewater Planning Board meeting for Wednesday, January 6th, 2021, being 6:30 p.m. and having a quorum. The first public hearing we have this evening is for 60 to 88 Broad Street. This is a continuation of West Point Realty Development. We're considering a special permit and site plan for construction. For the construction project includes 4 mixed-use buildings with commercial space on the first floor and residential units on the upper floor, as well as a separate parking lot serving the buildings. This includes maps 21, lots 95 to 98, and 202 to 205. Before we begin the public hearing, I'll just read in pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, the Governor's March 15th order suspending order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Bridgewater Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access proceedings in real time. This meeting is being recorded, and within 48 hours, we will post a link of the recording on the town's website and/or other town social media pages. The following members of the Bridgewater Planning Board are participating remotely. I am Patrick Driscoll, the chair, Mr. Raymond Ajemian, vice chair, Mrs. Jean Garino, the clerk, Mr. Michael McDonald, Mr. Stephen Geller, and we have a new associate member joining us this evening, Ms. Astrid Rojas. During the meeting, all votes of the board will be taken as roll call votes. The following Bridgewater town staff will be participating remotely as well. Ms. Jennifer Burke, the Community Economic Development Director, Mr. Elijah Romulus, the Assistant Town Planner, Mrs. Leslie Dorr, the Office Administrator, and Mr. Azu Antonero, the Town Engineer, is not with us now, but we anticipate he'll be joining us shortly. At this time, everyone's mic is muted. The board's mics will be unmuted through the whole meeting. And as items appear on the agenda, the project's representatives will be unmuted. If a project is a public hearing that allows for public comment, we ask that you use the chat feature to ask your question by listing your name and address of your question. The chat feature will not be public. It'll go to the host and they'll provide us with the questions in order. The chair will recognize the questions in order. You can also use the raise my hand feature in the participant menu, and you'll be unmuted when the chair recognizes you. Again, please state your name and address before asking a question. If you're on the phone, you may dial *9 to raise your hand. And I did that out of order, but I already opened the public hearing for 60 to 88 Broad Street. So with that being said, if we could turn it over to the applicant's representatives to give their presentation, that'd be great. Mr. Romulus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Troy Clarkson, Principal of Clarkson Consulting, representative of the developer. Thank you to members of the planning board and to the town staff. Since the last hearing, as you know, extensive changes have been made to the plans. I think probably the most important thing that I'll say this evening is that Mr. Pascal listened. He listened intently to the feedback, both from members of the planning board and from the community. And our team has submitted significantly altered plans that address most of the issues that were raised, both in the overall density of the project, the feel and the architecture of the project. And I want to give a lot of credit to Michael Dutton, Jennifer Burke, and the Bridgewater team for really working closely with us to submit this plan before you that we believe is much improved, but also has all the makings of something that you can approve. We do understand there are some lingering issues that need to be addressed, but our hope is that you will see the efforts that we put into this revised plan and how much it represents, I think, a partnership between Mr. Pascal and the town, and that we can move forward with conditions that ensure that the lingering issues will be addressed. I did have the opportunity to speak this afternoon with the town manager and understand that the issue of the development rights and the density on the parking lot on the east side of Broad Street continue to be an issue, and I will assure the planning board that we will address that in a way that is satisfactory to the planning board. But what I would ask is that we have the opportunity to really show you through our architect and our engineer the significant changes that have been made and how important the feedback of the planning board and the community was to us. So with that, I would ask that the other representatives of the project, including Larry Silva and our architect Tim Johnson, be allowed to walk you through some of the changes that were made since our last meeting.
Troy, can I just jump in for 1 sec? Can you folks hear me?
Yes.
I think Bill Wood had a few words he wanted to share with us prior. I don't know. I think he might have had some time constraints. So if it's okay, if he's online, I don't know if he is. I'd like to offer him the opportunity. Again, don't know if he's out there with us. He might not be here yet.
I am.
Okay.
So, Mr. Wood, I know you have other commitments. We're going to have public comment later on in the meeting. Do you want me to take, we do have a letter that you submitted. I don't know if that's been recognized yet or not.
That's fine. My overlap ended, so I'm good for the rest of the meeting. If you want me to wait on the comments, that's fine.
Yeah, that'd be great if we go through the presentation, and then we did print off your letter and address it.
Excellent.
in public comments.
That's fine with me. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll turn it, I guess, Troy, perhaps we'll turn over to Larry. He's available. Is Larry on board?
He is, yes.
I'm here, and also I believe Rebecca's on.
Okay, excellent.
With me as well.
Hello
Yes,
to
I
both
am.
of you.
So, and I mean, Rebecca may be the one better to exactly show what the changes were
Okay,
from last time to now, since she's the one that worked on it firsthand. So,
Is there any chance I can have the screen, Elijah?
Yeah, let me see if I can do that for you.
Should be all set, Rebecca. I just made you a co-host. Oh, thanks so much. Oh, it says still disabled. Hang on. Oh, there we go. Now it just changed. One moment. I'm sorry. Doo-doo-doo. Share. Oh, not my phone. The other one.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's good. I'm sorry. Technology is great when it wants to work for you.
There you go.
Awesome. Thank you.
leaving to both of you.
Excellent. There we go. Share this one and not all the other stuff. Okay. Is the cover on the screen?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Okay. Hi, Rebecca from Silver Engineering. So we've made some changes to the application for this special permit and site plan. One of the biggest ones we're going to mention is that we have removed lots B and C from the application. This changes the density and it changes the bedroom counts. So once we remove these from the area count, we actually were able to scroll down past existing conditions. And by removing these two here, B and C, we've met the landscaping 20% open space for D. We've met it for E, F, and G, and A as a combined site. We've met the parking for residential on site. And I know there's some concerns about commercial and we're sharing parking. We can talk about that in a little bit. This meets your parking requirements, it meets your landscaping requirements. The two biggest things that I remember from that last meeting. One of the other biggest things that we've changed is actually architecturally. If you can see the plan now, is that these buildings are all going to be 3 stories in the front portion, and then the rear portion that you won't see from the street will be the 4 stories. Those are the biggest key changes to any of these plans that you have in front of you. I know there's a little bit more housekeeping that we're going to do to make sure that our plans between architectural and site plan match. But this is what it would look from the streetscape, where we have this last building is at 86 is staying the same as designed before. If Tim wanted to talk about his buildings, he could, and his architectural.
He is on board
Um,
tonight as well.
He can talk better to the architectural and the plans that he has developed in front. Those are the biggest changes from a site plan point of view. To meet the parking, to meet the open space, green space requirement, and to try to soften the look of the buildings against the streetscape. I know we still have landscaping to coordinate, but with the Jardins design from before, we're just going to expand her looks to this new layout, add the lighting that needs to be added to the site now that the layout has been, adjusted and islands have been added. And I know there was a little bit more on the drainage that Azu had asked for. Speak of the man of the hour. I would like to turn it over to anybody who wants to speak or
Well-
have questions, or Larry, or
Yeah, I just have a couple of things. There's a couple comments that came forward. And
yes.
just to point out, there was an issue about the parking. There's a question about whether or not the handicap parking that
Oh, yeah.
was in the lot across the street was to meet requirements on the proposed buildings. And though the requirements are being met on each one of the individual sites. But so the ones that are in that parking lot that's just in the public parking. I think that's correct, Rebecca, is that correct?
Yep, so I'll expand. G, F, E, these three needed 2 handicap per the commercial requirements for the number of parking required. And so each one has 2 designated handicap for each building. After looking at it, the only one that really needed another parking spot, the commercial on D would need 1 handicap and the striping associated with it. So on the condition of approval plan set, I would have to actually add another one spot here to keep it proximate to the building.
Right, and there were 2 other issues. One was the acknowledgement that we've shown on the plan that we are in the buffer zone for building E. The rear portion of building E is in the buffer zone to a wetland, and we understand the requirement that we will have to go to conservation for that approval. And also the back and forth that has taken place as it relates to the parking lot across the street. It was an approved parking lot from a Chenzo's restaurant back in 1994, but we intend to do test pits with our zoo in order to make sure that any adjustment that needs to be made in order to meet stormwater requirements is done for that parking lot. And I think that's pretty much the gist of the changes and response to some of the comments that came forward since then.
Larry, I think one thing, if I can add, is for the most part is from an architectural standpoint, which was requested by some of the neighbors, some of the townsfolk, thought that the height of the buildings were too high. We still met the requirement at 4 stories, but we heard the response and we addressed it. The front of those buildings is now at 3 stories, as Troy mentioned earlier. And we believe that's a very cohesive look along Broad Street now. It shouldn't be, I think, a concern of anybody within the town as they enter either north or south on Broad Street. And I think it's, they're still very, very beautiful buildings, but 1 story lower. So I hope that takes care of some of those concerns that were originally raised.
With the understanding, Jim, that even at the 4 story, they are within the zoning allowances.
That's correct. That's exactly right.
So, Mr. Silva, did you receive the email from Mr. Antonero today?
Yes,
Is Mr. Antonero with us now?
You should be, I don't know.
He is on the call.
So basically, he had four comments. The first one really was just a clarification comment. The second one addresses the proposed bordering vegetated wetland. That's what you already addressed, Mr. Silver, right? So you will have to file with
That's
Concom.
correct.
Number three was the stormwater recharge systems are within the 3 feet of groundwater elevation. The applicant should perform groundwater mounding evaluation to verify that the systems would still be above the groundwater mound. What is that, Mr. Antonero?
Basically, the DEP regulations, which basically is the same guidelines that we adopted for stormwater management, says that when your recharge system is less than 4 feet from your seasonal high groundwater, that you will need to do a groundwater mounting calculation. Basically, what it is as your system is recharging, it builds an artificial surge in the groundwater level. So your groundwater will be built up. And as the groundwater is built up, it's just still going to be able to recharge. Look at it this way. If you take a sponge and soak it in water, and that sponge is totally saturated with water, will it still soak in more water? So basically, that's what the ground mounting calculation verifies. That now it does not mean that they have to be 3 feet or even 2 feet. They just have to show that with their mound, even if it's only now at 1 inch or 2 inch separation, that in fact the system is not in water table. That's all we're trying to establish when you do a mound calculation. That even if your groundwater is mounded by a foot or two, that you're still going to have separation from that temporary surge in groundwater level.
Now, is that an on-site test? Is that a calculation? What is that?
Just a calculation.
Calculation.
Okay. So then number four, so we still haven't done any test pits on the east side for that drainage facility?
No,
No,
but we did find, and I don't know if you have them, Mizzou, but we did find the test pits that were done originally for that, for that parking lot, and for that drainage system. They were done before stormwater management was in effect. It was done in
92.
92.
yeah, that's way over. That will not be useful.
All right, so that's still an outstanding item that
Yeah.
we need to review the drainage system, correct, Mr. Antonero?
That will be an information that will be relevant. And as I understand it, there is some sort of a recharge system that was put in.
Yes.
I don't know if they would have put a recharge back then, because the town did not even require recharging, and the DEP regulations certainly did not require recharging back then. So
But we
I'm
did.
not sure. Pardon me?
No, that is a recharge system. We used it. I think they were infiltrators, and we had the design.
But I guess my question is the bottom line is there's other issues that we're gonna have to work through tonight, and we're gonna have to come back and hopefully have everything complete. Is this something that can be done pretty quickly, in terms of evaluating the system the next couple of weeks?
Why can't we condition it?
Well, I think we have to make sure the drainage works. What if, the board has to consider the drainage.
I think it's a small site view that needs to get done. I'm not sure that it's something we can do right now.
Okay, we can come back to that, but, all right, should we continue or? Mr. Antonero, do you have any other site comments?
No, short and simple. The other issues have already been addressed by the director of CED and by your staff planner, Mr. Romulus. And I think they've addressed those items satisfactorily related to zoning and all those ratios. So it does not make any sense for me to start commenting on those. That's why my comments are very focused and limited.
All right, but we're still waiting on, so, I mean, I don't think with the outstanding issues, I don't think we can wrap this up tonight anyway. But we still need a lighting plan, correct?
When the landscaping gets updated, the lighting will get updated as well.
All right.
Can I ask Mr. Antonero if he has any issue with us doing that on a conditional basis, and with respecting the authority of the board, I say that with that. Azu, do you have any issue with us moving forward with that on a conditional basis?
If
The parking lot issue?
Well, if the board allows that, that would be up to the board, but I don't have a problem either way. So it's up to the board to make that determination. But either way, I have no problem as long as the information is provided before or after. But I'm not adverse to the board making that a condition.
Okay, thank you.
But that would be up to the board.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead,
Mr.
Mr.
Chair-
Silva.
Yeah, as you recall, so a lot of times in the past, there may be some minor outstanding issues that were, at the time that the board voted to approve, they made it a condition to be done prior to, endorsement of the site plan. So, I mean, you still don't have to sign off on the actual approval that you would vote until those other items are provided to you. You've done this many times in the past.
Right, but as Mr. Clarkson stated earlier on, we have an issue we have to address with the TDR that we can't address this evening. So my hope is that all this can be done prior to our next meeting so that we can wrap it all up if that's the will of the board. I just think that if drainage structures are required in a parking lot and we're in charge of reviewing drainage, I mean, that shouldn't be an open item. We should review it and approve it and get a review from our engineer. But we can come back to that. So any other board comments or questions?
I can't believe that we're holding up the approval process over a couple of test pits on a accessory parking area.
So we can continue on the, any other site questions? Any other site questions from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I believe as you said in the beginning, we have to resolve the TDR before approval. I just want to make one general comment. A number of issues are being addressed. In particular, I like the pushing back the fourth story on the building. But what to me, the elephant in the room is that the board, essentially most members of the board, if not all, and the public have talked about having buildings on both sides of the street instead of one side. And as far as I know, that has not been addressed. Mr. Clarkson has, in his introduction back in September, pointed out that this is a landmark project, and I agree. He's absolutely right. And because of that, I think we need to be very careful how we go about approving this. And so what I'm saying is, I'd like to know why we don't have buildings on both sides of the streets when that has been pretty much what everybody seems to want. Yet we don't get a plan with it. I was a little dismayed when I saw the plan Monday that there was not a building on the other side of the street. So I'd like some sort of response to that.
What would you choose to do, Mr. Ajemian? Would you choose to take one of the buildings off the west side and put it on the parking lot A?
That would be good.
So on such a small site of A versus a larger site of E or F, G obviously is too small, D is too small.
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying at least examine it and see whether it's workable. I mean, right from my point of view is that has been brought up a number of times and has not been addressed. And I'm trying to be open-minded about it, but I'd like to know whether it can be done. That's all. And a decision like that is probably not going to be made right now. I'm just saying, let's give it a try. We're talking about something that is going to be part of this town for the next maybe 100 years. We want this. This is the main street in the town. We want to see it done right. And I'm not saying we're not doing it. I'm trying to be open-minded about it. I like much of what I'm seeing. I'm just saying that I don't want to be a part of an approval process that approves something that could be better, especially what we're doing right now. I don't want to rush this. I think we're moving in the right direction. But the main thing in my mind has been and still is 3 large buildings on one side of the street. And the idea of a building on the other side has not been addressed as far as I know.
So Damian, I know you don't want to rush this, but I've been on this for 8.5 years. I don't think we've rushed it.
Well, in terms of it being before the planning board, I think it's being rushed.
Mr. Chairman, can I provide some insight into Mr. Jimian's question?
Sure. Well, sure, but Mr. Clarkson, if you don't mind, maybe before you do that, if I could have, I think what we're trying to do is not only work through the site plan this evening and to make sure it complies with our rules and regulations, et cetera.
Right.
But there's also the issue of the TDR. And what I'd like to do tonight, and I don't know if the board knows or doesn't know how we would have to do this TDR because we don't have a mechanism in our zoning to do it. So I think we really need to give feedback. And maybe have Ms. Burke explain to us the process of how we could achieve a TDR and then decide if we want to go down that road or not with the developer. So if Ms. Burke could explain what the TDR is, what they're looking to do, what our zoning allows for, what they're looking for outside of zoning, and could we or could we not support that? I think that would be helpful.
Sure. Do you want me to do that now, or do you want Mr. Clarkson to address Mr. Jimian's comments?
Sure.
first?
I think it's sure, Mr. Clarkson, if you want to go first and then Ms. Burke, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, not at all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I think the two issues are actually related because, you know, the issue of the transfer of development rights came up based on the opinion from the town attorney related to the need to have the pieces of the project contiguous. And so that was a departure from how we had proceeded, but it's where we're at now. So it's clearly something we need to deal with. To specifically address the comments that Mr. Jimian made, I would very sincerely submit that we listened, and I think the status of the project, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, is clear evidence that we listened to the planning board and to the community and made significant changes to the project, including significant reductions in density, which impact the viability of the project from the perspective of the developer. But from the get-go, from when we first sat down to talk about this, and Jim's right, it was several years ago, you know, our objective was to work with the town to create something that we could all be proud of. And we still feel that way. As it relates to having something on the east side of Broad Street, one of the discussions we've had for quite some time was making some of that parking available as overflow public parking. During our discussions, the town has felt that that was important. Certainly, it's been important to Jim as the developer. So I think that the changes that we've made represent what we believe is the best use of the aggregation of these properties, all of these properties together. So the fact that we have not introduced units on parcel A on the east side of Broad Street, I don't think represents a lack of listening, but it represents our sincere position as to what we believe the best structuring of the project is, and that includes lots of feedback from the town. So what we have before you is what we believe to be the best project that we can submit that works for the developer. I think if we put units on the east side, the issue of the non-contiguous project still exists, and so that's something that we need to address.
Mr. Chairman, could I just add to that a little bit?
Sure.
Okay, the only building that could even be considered to sort of swap with the positioning to the other side would be the building that's now Site D. Okay, now, and to put the building, to swap those two would put some of this parking in the location where D is. And quite honestly, parking in that location does not serve any real purpose as far as the community. Where the parking is now on parcel A, it helps the businesses that are immediately to the south. You look at that building that's adjacent to it there, they're begging for a place to have a parking space. They don't have anything in that direction. As you go further south, you have uses like the Greyhound Tavern and some of the other businesses in the old Gottschalk's building that actually would benefit by having that parking in that area. It's a central location to serve a lot of that downtown area. I think it would be actually not beneficial to swap it put a building in that location. You're taking away, I believe, a good resource that will be created there.
Okay, Ms. Burke, do you want to explain where we are and what we need to
Sure.
consider?
So section 19 of your zoning, 1904, number 8, outlines the allowable density bonuses. It gives 18 units per acre by right, and then allows the planning board to allow for up to 26 units per acre of density bonuses for certain items. And one of those items is a transfer of development rights, which allows for 1.5 units for every 1 unit of transfer that you're transferring the development rights. And what that means is that the developer is transferring the rights to develop, we'll use these examples, on parcel A to parcels G, F, E, and D, we'll say, and restricting future developable rights for a public benefit. And in this case, the public benefit is the public parking, the availability of the public parking lot. The planning board would have to determine that the benefit is worth the, density bonus in that case. Now, where the confusion comes in is, to Mr. Clarkson's point, the legal opinion by our town attorney that the contiguous land is what makes up a quote unquote project, is what defines the 26 units per acre. So the town attorney has determined that lots D, E, F, and G are one project and can have up to 26 units per acre and no more. Now lot A is another project because that is contiguous in and of itself and can have up to 26 units per acre over there as well. You cannot increase that density on D, E, F, and G over the 26 units per acre without a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So if the developer wanted to transfer their development rights to get more than 26 units per acre at D, E, F, and G, he would need to get a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So what he would do is he would go get that variance and then come back to the planning board. The planning board would approve the special permit with the transfer of development rights, and then the transfer of development right would be approved through the planning board and would be restricted under the planning board special permit.
Why haven't we talked about this before?
We have, Jim, many times.
Come on.
So what I'm looking for is from the board, because if we're okay with all the units being on one side, and they go, and Mr. Pascal goes and has the cap lifted from, let's say, 25 to 33, let's say, is that something the board is comfortable with based on these revised drawings? I mean, I think that's the feedback we need to work through now so we can make it work, or make it not work, whatever the board. I need board feedback so that we can go in some direction.
Just add one thing, just because I think Mr. Jimian's question is a good one. So if you would allow, I'd just like to sort of inject myself, because the town has been sort of a partner in this proposal. So if I could, I will point out, I think eventually, especially with this development going in, I think we'll see redevelopment on the east side of Broad Street. I'm certain of that. But I think just sort of adding to Mr. Silva's comments and what we saw when we sat down over many months with the development team is that we do need parking in that location. The multiple businesses have asked us if they could use that parking space. Obviously, we're not the owner, so we can't grant that permission. But we did see that as an optimum location for commercial parking, retail parking. So for what it's worth, our preference would be that parking remain there, knowing that we're going to see redevelopment on the east side of Broad Street, certainly after this project.
Can I get some board feedback on the comments?
I for one, first commend the developer for listening to what they had to say and actually do almost what we wanted to do. I actually like the new look. I personally think that because what's on one side of the road existing now, that if you stuck a 3-story building on the other side with a 4-story behind it, that would be a building that would look out of place and out of sorts. So I, for one, like it all sides. I agree that the parking is probably an asset. Part of the business is on that part. So, thank you for listening to us and changing pretty dramatically. I think the only comment on the plans, and I know we're really not an architectural review board, is 2 middle buildings, the doghouse at the top. Those steps kind of back that you're not going to see it from the street.
I'll let the architect address that, Mr. Geller, but you definitely would not see those. They would be almost invisible.
Invisible.
Okay, Mr. Jemian, Mr. McDonald, Mrs. Garino, feedback?
Well, I missed a portion of this. I lost connection. On the front of the buildings, are there like patios in case those are restaurants, that there could be outside seating for the restaurants?
There is, in fact, on the site plan, you'll see that. And I'll let Tim Johnson address that.
Yes, if we can go to the architectural site plan. Yes, ma'am. So you can see on the 2 center buildings, we have patio areas to the right of the 3-story portion of the building. And then if we scroll down a little bit further, we've also provided some patio area for the existing building with the multi-story addition on top. That's on plot 98 or number 60.
Mhm.
So yes, ma'am, we have provided outdoor patio area for the each building.
Okay. Now, I just had one in the back there. I know there's an easement. And there's going to be a lot of impervious, you know, we're covering a lot of the land for drainage. And I know one of the houses back there never had water damage or water problems until the bank went in. Will there be more water back there, or is it draining someplace?
Larry, is that something you can address?
Well, we're not gonna have any, we're not gonna have a negative impact back there. In fact, we're pretty much perched up in those locations, so we're kind of isolating runoff so that the runoff is more contained to our site. It doesn't really contribute to neighboring sites, and our overflows go into the street system.
Okay.
So I don't think that there is, I can't see of one case there where we are going to exacerbate any issue. We probably will mitigate some issues that do exist right now.
Okay, that'll be good.
Well, actually, I have another, wait, Mr. Johnson's on the phone, and then this might help the board. So the mass of the buildings, Mr. Johnson, so on Mr. Silva's site plan, he's showing now that the bedroom count's at 100, which is 39 units per acre or whatever it is, 39 bedrooms per acre.
Bedrooms.
But the architectural site plans still show the majority of the units being 2-bedroom units. Will the mass of the building shrink up once you actually change those floor plans to incorporate more of the 1-bedrooms?
Mr. Chairman, we have revised the floor plans. If we can go to the architectural floor plans, please, if we can scroll down. So there's our foundation plan. Next would be our commercial spaces at ground floor.
Okay.
And as we scroll up, the 1-bedrooms are in blue and the 2-bedrooms are in green. So we show a total of 67 units with 100 bedrooms. 34 of those 67 are 1-bedrooms and 33 are 2-bedrooms. So you can scroll up, and we've also did layouts of the 1- and 2-bedroom units, as you can see there. So again, the 1-bedrooms are in blue and the 2-bedrooms are in green.
Am I looking at, they're small, so they look the same to me, that's all.
Well, the 1-bedrooms have a bedroom and an office, and the 2-bedrooms have a shared living space and no office. Some of the larger 2-bedrooms, we may incorporate an office, because with obviously the current situation we're in, working from home now could be something we do a lot going forward.
All right, I just make sure that, you know, and we're not zoning enforcement, but make sure that before we do the final approval, those bedroom counts comport with our zoning, you know, requirements, that's all.
We took the closets out of those as well, so they're marked and set aside as offices, and we're intent
Yeah,
on that.
we just probably want Mr. Solari to review it. We have a
Yep.
bedroom, we have a bedroom definition, and we just want to make sure that
Yep.
that complies, that's all.
Perfect.
So yes, Mr. Chairman, we did update the plans per your comments. And on the larger buildings, we reduced the density of each building approximately 12% by removing the 4th floor at the front portions of the buildings.
Okay.
That doesn't include, of course, numbers 86 at the far right, which is a gable roof. That massing pretty much stayed the same.
Okay. The front of the buildings, they look nice, but I just can't tell. Is 60% of the front of the buildings glass or glazing?
Yes, it is. It is. If
So
you go to
all the buildings meet that glazing requirement?
They do indeed. And we also provided, of course, a signage band above the windows.
What is the height of the commercial space? Is the ceiling height greater than that of the residential? So
Yes.
Oh, yes, we have a 13-foot floor to floor, so it would be
good.
approximately 11.5 feet. And then we go 10-foot floor to floor on the upper floors.
So if there's no more board comment, I'd like to get some public comment and then give them some feedback in terms of the TDR, if that's okay. Do we want, are we okay with opening up the public at this point? Mr. Romulus, do you see anybody that would like to speak from the public?
Mr. Wood, I think probably should speak first, right? Because he.
So we do, if Mr. Wood is still with us, we do have a lengthy letter that we all received, just for the record, that we received on November 18th, 2020. And Mr. Wood, you can either summarize this letter, we could read it in for you, you could read it in, or you could just go off the cuff, whatever you'd like to do.
I wasn't going to speak that long tonight, so I think the important thing is that if all board members have read the letter, I focus on probably two main ingredients. One is pedestrians, and I firmly believe that the benefit to downtown revitalization, both Broad Street and Central Square, are pedestrians that walk around that actually have cash in their pocket. And we don't see a lot of walk around people right now. You see a lot of traffic. You don't see a lot of people on the street. These buildings and these apartments offer the area businesses a lot of potential that hopefully will help them build their business and improve the buildings around them as a catalyst. I heard, a lot of discussion tonight about the parking. I didn't really include that in my letter, but I have to agree that, I've looked at parking now for 10 years in the Central Square and downtown areas, and parking is tough. I've heard two consultants say we have plenty of parking, but we really don't. Those areas around that have successful downtowns and successful areas where people come, especially if they're a destination, the people need to have easy parking. And as Mr. Silva pointed out, where Lot A is today is closer to the southern end and closer to Main Street. It becomes more viable as a shared space, like the other consultants talked about, the shared space for, I'm not sure the name of the new place hasn't opened up, but the old Bruno's and the tavern and even some of those other places. And now we see Restoration Coffee going in. So I can easily imagine, the residents of these areas either going into, maybe a food stop at their own building, maybe hopefully a really nice restaurant shows up, in which case parking is essential, but also that bring more vibrancy to the downtown area. I've looked at these plans or, variations of this now. I think there have been 5 major changes. I think that the teams, both from the town and the board and the developer, have worked together constantly to try to make improvements. And I understand it's a complex process and there's always questions. But this configuration, as a layperson here, looks viable. There was a question about frontage. Developer pulled it back, even though when we wrote the zoning ordinance for mixed space, the intention was to allow 45 feet. The board asked if it could be pulled back. The developer made some changes. There were comments throughout about the style of the building, and I think the architect, from what I've seen in the drawings now, makes it look very compatible with the area, very harmonious with the area, and it works. I don't think any of the discussion really focused on spreading it out and across the street, and even during our early discussions with the ordinance that we did, we looked at projects that were across the street from each other. My understanding was that is adjacent property. I couldn't speak about the Academy building for a long time because my mother owned a house across the street. It was considered an abutter. So, that's my relative focus. But, pedestrians parking continues to be the focus here. if you have a destination restaurant, you need to have spaces that are easily accessible and easily to find in the area around the restaurant. And to support those other small businesses, you need to have pedestrians. And to get pedestrians, you need to have the residential density that's shown here and has, money in the pockets to spend. You might find in the future that there's, holiday pop-up boutiques or other, other small venues that benefit from these. And you're hopefully going to see some more downtown investment because of this project. So I'm hoping we're near the conclusion. It has been a long road and we've seen a lot of changes. It's a lot of people have done a lot of work, and I thank the board for all their input and the town officials for theirs, and the developer for making adjustments as we go along. Hopefully we're very close to the end. And I think I wouldn't support this if it didn't benefit Bridgewater. And I strongly feel that this project benefits Bridgewater and will have a positive impact on the downtown. Thank you.
Okay. So any other public comment, Mr. Romulus?
We have Mr. Columbotus. We have
Sure.
a couple waiting too, so.
Mr. Columbotus?
So thank you for the time. 15 Plymouth Street. I have one kind of overarching comment, and that is that I think it's important to point out that this really is the first time our mixed-use zoning is being implemented on a large scale. And for that reason, I think it's incredibly important that the board take, exercise full due diligence and not take any shortcuts, not cut corners, not put things off when, can overly condition the project, but instead be really careful about how we do it. Because you can bet that the next mixed-use building application that comes in will cite this project and the process by which it was approved. And so, we're setting a precedent here. So we need to be careful and not grant relief where it's not necessary or otherwise, compromises the public interest. So I just want to make that point. Secondly, while our zoning ordinance does refer to the transfer of development rights, I don't see where the mechanism is actually spelled out. I know at one point we did have there's a transfer of development rights mechanism for Bedford Street overlay district. But I'm just wondering what exactly is the mechanism that the planning board would call upon to justify the transfer of development rights from one side of the street to the other. Is that something
Ms. Burke?
to address?
It's in the zoning and it's allowed under the zoning, and so they could use the special permit as their ability to do that.
So the enabling legislation would be crafted kind of on the fly as part of the special permit process?
Correct.
Well,
that seems like a precarious proposition, I must say.
so the way I understand it though, Ms. Burke, is that what we'd be asking the ZBA to do, if we decide to do this, would be to lift the cap from 26 to that 33 number, let's say, and then we'd utilize the mechanism we have to fulfill that new cap, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Okay. Any
Mr.
other?
Chairman, does the town understand and accept the fact that they get an extensive benefit with Lot A? That it not becomes a benefit not only to my commercial spaces, but to the center of the town, which I'm paying for.
I think that benefit is overblown, but.
Okay.
Okay, just, all right. Do we
We
have
have,
anyone?
yep, we have Dr. Hunt. Oh, did I? am I on?
Thank you very much. As an extensive commenter on this, I do appreciate the modifications. I think they're, as somebody said earlier, in the right direction. But I have a couple of, I haven't had any chance to really look at it in detail. This tonight's presentation is what I call the elevator speech level of review on this kind of project. So, but a couple of quick questions on the parking lot. I understand the commercial parking on the east side on A, but my concern is our residents the renters going to be parking in that lot also?
No.
That's strictly for down commercial, right?
I think Rebecca can answer that probably best.
Yes, the residents have parking spots accounted for on each parcel, D, E, F, and G. Visitor spaces do actually overflow into A, but only a handful. Residents have parking on each of their parcels.
That's great because, but my question still then, if that's people and customers coming to the commercial aspects, I know there's 4 curb cuts there, but I also know that that street can be very dangerous to cross if you're on the surface level. And so people that are accessing the commercial operations are going to have to get across that street. And what safety measures are planned to protect those citizens and enable them to get across the street? And the other one is during rush hour, those 4 curb cuts, you could have a lot of people trying to get out into that area during rush hour. And that's the one concern I have. I don't worry about the traffic count. It's the accessibility during rush hours, ingress and egress from the streets. Then it could cause all sorts of backups, that kind of thing. So that's one of my questions that I think needs to be addressed. And the other piece is what's the build out schedule for this? Is it 2 years? Is it, what's the expectation?
So Dr. Hunt, just quickly, just so I understand your question, are you asking if there's anything, any type of it's one of the questions I had, any type of crosswalks or anything from A to, let's say, F or in E? Is that your question?
Yeah. That's what's the traffic management plan for the rush hours specifically? Because that's when it backs up. I mean, we all know how it backs up down there. We all experience it. We experience a 5-light delay turning left off the common going north. And I just worry about public safety and the potentially negative effect that would have on the commercial use. That's that question. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hunt. Any other public?
Yep. Mark Lindy is here, and I know he gave us a letter, but I'll unmute him and ask if he wants to speak to his letter.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lundy?
Okay. I actually was just going to have to let the letter read.
I apologize. We don't have a copy of the letter, so if you want to.
Elijah can read it into
I can read it into the record.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yes, so this was received later this afternoon. It reads, Dear members of the planning board, as a resident of Bridgewater, I am officially requesting that the matter on this evening's agenda not be closed this evening in order to ensure more public input. I would like to present written comments after the presentation is made. 60 to 88 Broad Street, West Point Realty, special permit and site plan construction project includes 4 mixed-use buildings with commercial space on the first floor and residential units on the upper floors, as well as a separate parking lot to service the buildings. It is my understanding that there may have been significant revisions to the project, and it is my belief that any vote on this matter tonight will not allow for adequate time to review the plans by the public. I will be attending the meeting tonight, but I have another town meeting to attend, so most likely I will be attending the public hearing late. I would greatly appreciate if a minimum of 2 additional weeks be extended to ensure adequate public comment and review. Thank you for your consideration. Mark Lindy, 56 Michael Road.
Any other public comment?
I don't see any in the chat or on raising their hand, so. Oh, Mr. Wood is asking to speak again.
I just have a question. So my letter was 4 pages. We don't need to read it, but I would appreciate it being part of the official record, submitted into the official record for the.
It will be.
Or whatnot. Thank you.
While we're doing public comment, I know we're bouncing all around. We do have a memorandum from Michael Dutton that if Gene doesn't want to read into the record, I could read into the record. Gene, did I lose you?
Yeah, I muted myself for a while.
Do you have a copy of it, or do you want me to read it?
I do have a copy of it. I just have to find it. Do you have it accessible?
Yeah, I have it.
Oh, okay. Why don't you go ahead?
So this is just for the public record, we received a memorandum to the planning board from Michael Dutton, town manager, dated January 5th, 2021. It was also sent to a number of town employees, which I won't read all those. It was addressed to us. The planning board has before it a revised site plan for the Broad Street project. The project submitted by the West Point Realty Development has been reviewed internally by building official Steve Solari, CE&D Director Jennifer Burke, and the town engineer Azu Antonero. Ms. Burke has given you the staff's analysis. While we have noted several minor items that need to be addressed by the development team at your hearing, I write to let you know that I am in support of the newly submitted plan. One of the issues we discussed both with the department team and internally was the adequacy of the parking lot on the east side of the street. While it has been developed, permitted, and used in the past for the parking lot, we have argued that it needs a more careful review to ensure that it meets current stormwater standards. This is important due to the changing MS4 reporting requirements, which demand the town report to the DEP and the EPA on an annual basis. As you know, the developer has not yet provided test pit data from the lot area. While this is important, it is not an issue requiring prolonged planning board contemplation. The development team has agreed to do the necessary work and has agreed to make the project's approval conditioned upon the lot's compliance. This is a similar method to what you agreed on the Fruit Street project near the Pleasant Street Route 24 intersection. Finally, as I have mentioned in times past, one of the basic tenets of modern post-retail planning is that in order to support a vibrant business community, you need proximate residential density. The town council has recently approved this zoning under which the project is being proposed. It approved it specifically to allow for increases in residential density with assurances of additional benefits to the town. Town council has also made one of its goals the redevelopment of the downtown area. This project meets all these goals and brings market rate units into the downtown area. This is the only way we will see an improved business community. On behalf of the businesses that are clinging on and the businesses that will eventually populate these new buildings, I ask that you review the proposal, make appropriate findings, and vote to approve it. So we received that, Mr. Woods and Mr. Lindy's. I don't think we received any other correspondence. Are there any other public comments before we go back to board discussion?
I don't have any.
Mr. Wood?
Oh, Mr. Wood.
Sorry, just one thing I forgot to mention before. The town manager can elaborate on this, but we have started taking a look at the safety features on Broad Street. And that's one of the objectives of revitalization is you have to make it safe to cross the street, regardless of, what it is. If last year, the owner of the jewelry store came before the council and talked about how there is public parking outside of Me King and House of Pizza, and that is customers have to cross the street there. I've looked at that several times. The crosswalks are horrible. Part of the comprehensive improvement process of Broad Street has to be to improve overall pedestrian crossings, not just for this project, but overall for the entire town experience, as well as the central business district higher or on the southern end, so Central Square. It's very dangerous to cross the street there. It's very dangerous to cross Main Street. We need to have a comprehensive look, not just for this project. And I think that the town manager has some monies and some other pieces in the work already. Thanks.
Okay, so if there's no other public comment, we can come back to public comment later, but I'd like to hop back to the board. So with the discussion, the public comment, and the proposed site plan, is there any more thought on the TDR where the board is on the transfer from one side of the street to the other and having them pursue a variance to lift the bonus cap from 26 to the number needed to get to 67?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a comment on that at this time, but I do just a minor question regarding Broad Street and the crosswalk. I appreciate Mr. Wood's point about trying to improve crossing the street. But my question is, if you are to exit any one of the proposed buildings, are you going to allow a left turn? That's the question, because turning left on the Broad Street presents a problem, as it does when coming out of the plaza before. There's a no left turn sign there. Anybody?
Mr. Chairman,
Sure, Mr. Silva.
I think that it would be dangerous to say that you could not take a left turn. And I say dangerous in the sense that if you're going to take all this traffic and say that whenever you exit one of these sites, you have to go to the center of town. And to me, that doesn't make a lot of logistic sense. I think that the ability to turn left is going to be based on the queuing that may occur along this stretch. Obviously, the traffic. I don't think that what I found is people are relatively courteous as far as letting you enter into the lane or cross the lane when you come out of one of the other existing driveways. I think that it would be a bad precedent to say no left turn out of these individual driveways. That's just my thought.
Well, I don't know, but I'm just saying the coming out of the previous driveway for the gas station there is a no left turn sign, and that can be dangerous. I've had cars legally make the left turn as I'm coming up Broad Street, and it can be dangerous. I'm just questioning whether you even consider that, making a no left turn.
And Ray is right on that. There are no left turns coming out of Walgreens on either of the exits there. Both of those are right turn only, and May King is right turn only. It gets very clogged up when they start trying to do lefts, especially when the train comes through town.
The difference with that, with both properties that you've mentioned, is that they have alternative exits to those properties. So the one coming out from the Walgreens area has actually options of going out to Summer Street. And then the one from Mee King also has the ability to go out to Main Street. So I think that that's the reason why you could make that kind of restriction and not impede the ability to make another choice in terms of how you proceed.
Well, you're going to have to also figure out then the pedestrian, because if they're going to be doing left turns out of the apartments, out of the parking lot, and you're going to have people trying to cross the street, traffic tied up from Main Street down to the train station, somebody's going to get killed there.
Okay, any other board questions or comments on architecture or the site plan for the applicants?
So I guess the only comment I have on that left turn discussion, as far as I know, those left turns coming out of those existing properties were added later on. They weren't part of the initial build out. And when Friendly's existed in that spot, we took left turns going out. I know a lot of traffic is building on Broad Street, but I really don't see the issue myself personally of having to take a left turn to get onto Broad Street. Coming out of those. They're a little bit farther down from the center of town where the light is. And I think that's the whole purpose of, they made it to go away from the light on one side and towards the light on the other. I think if you did want to do a right turn only out of those, I think you're going to create a more traffic problem in the center of town.
That's correct.
So Mr. Silva, back to the site quickly, just in regards to parking. So and maybe this is a question for Mr. Antonero. I know our zoning allows for 12-foot aisles, drive aisles. And I see that the circulation is proposed one way. How does that work with 90-degree parking, Mr. Antonero? Are we better off to have 60-degree parking back there as we have in our parking, or are you okay with the 90-degree?
The parking configuration is not a problem. It actually, if you look at it, it's a little bit actually more suitable for traffic circulation.
So you're the 90-degree parking with an 18-foot aisle and one-way circulation, there's no problem with that in terms of maneuvering a vehicle, and you're happy with that, correct?
Yes, as long as it's a one-way circulation, that's why I don't have a problem with it. Because in reality, you can actually go down to 16 feet. That is the absolute minimum that you want to go to. So 18 feet is very much suitable.
Okay, and then Mr. Silva, on parcel A across the street, in addition, so in addition to drainage that upgrades, you're also proposing a complete reconstruction of that binder course, new pavement, lighting, all that curbing, et cetera?
Well, we originally were not proposing a new binder course. I mean, there was a binder and a finished course there before nature took over and started growing trees through the cracks in the pavement. So I would say that when we do the test pits, Azu and I can look at that pavement and I think that we can come to an agreement as to how invasive the reconstruction needs to be. If we obviously have an issue as it relates to groundwater, then we would have to address that anyway. But if we can save that pavement that's there as at least the binder cost, I think that would be the ideal case.
Can I just add, Larry, that, Mr. Chairman, as well, that we plan on plantings and some stone walls on each of those entryways. Beautify that whole area.
Okay, so Mr. Antonero, have you reviewed the improvement plan for that? Are you okay with that, or do you need to see that on site?
I think I will hold a further comment on that in abeyance until we do some test pits.
Okay. And I mean, I think that's why it's important that we keep it open, and we don't have an improvement plan for A. We need to figure out this TDR, and it'd be nice if we could get the test bits done, and all that at the same time. So, any other site questions? And so I know we said this before. The lighting plan will be submitted along with the updated landscape plan, so we could review that as well, Mr. Silva.
Yes, there was a lighting was included with the landscaping that you have. It'll be updated with the new landscaping.
Did we?
That was 2 meetings ago. We supplied that, I believe.
Did we see that lighting plan, Ms. Burke and Mr. Romulus?
I believe you did at a previous meeting.
Yes, we shared it with the board.
And has that been reviewed?
Yes, everything that's been submitted has been reviewed.
Okay. All right, so the lighting plan will be up. Okay. Any other site comments or questions?
I do think the new plans are a vast improvement over the old ones, so I commend the developer on that. They very obviously took the feedback to heart. Although I do still feel the density, if we granted the TDR, would be a bit too high personally. But otherwise, I think it's a vast improvement.
Okay.
I have one question, if I could, and that is when we're making these final adjustments, are you asking that we provide for crosswalks, or is that something that the town's going to be looking at from Broad Street on a more comprehensive basis?
I mean, I would like to see some sort of agreement with the town for a raised crosswalk, something just to connect the two parcels, so to speak, and create a safe crossing environment. But,
Mr. Chair, if I could, I would recommend that to the extent that crosswalks are included in the plan, that we can have a conversation with Mr. Silva and our our roadways head, as well as our town engineer, just to identify where the optimum place is for a crosswalk. I know the highway department has very specific guidelines and standards about raised sidewalks and so forth. So I'd recommend that conversation go to those three.
okay, all right. So the other policy thing that maybe we can refer this back to Mr. Dutton is the developers agreement. So have all the board members read the developers agreement? Are they comfortable with it? Essentially what it's doing is granting 20 units in extra density to get Mr. Pascal up to that 26 units per acre from 18. Is everybody comfortable with that? I have a few comments on it, but if anybody else wants to go first, that's fine.
Well, Mr. Chairman, my general comment is that some of the issues that we've been discussing and have discussed in the past would be resolved if the number of units were diminished. That then I think that, for instance, traffic, for instance, we're maximizing the number of units, whether they're on the north side, the west side or east side of the street. I think that in itself presents some problems.
For Jimmy on that one.
Okay, so I guess we gotta, work through that and talk about that a little bit. Personally, I'm okay with the density bonus. And I'm okay with the bones of it. I just think that if we could refer it back to Mr. Dutton, just for maybe like a cleanup, so this, if we decide, once we decide how many units we're okay with granting, just so that, I think it's a good doc, a good step in the right direction. I just think that I've said this before, there are amounts in there that talk about up to 350,000 for a specific use. Up to is anywhere between 0 and 350,000. So if we're voting on something and we think we're getting X in mitigation, I think that number should be a firm number and not an up to number. If the intent was for the three items that we're getting mitigation for roughly $350,000, it should be the 350,000 and not up to, and it shouldn't be any more either. And I think that there's a solar density bonus in there that doesn't comply with zoning, so that just needs to be adjusted. We can only give one density bonus per building. And I think that there should be a schedule of when the payments will be received, in terms of how the project is phased and when each payment's done. And then on top of that, I think we need a phasing plan. So let's say, I think in his phasing plan, the developer proposes to build building D first. But then when does parking lot A get refurbished and done? Is that after E? Is that after F? So I think we need a detailed phasing plan. So maybe we could have get some feedback on the density, some more feedback, but then have the town manager work to just maybe work with Mr. Clarkson to clean that developers agreement up so the language is tight. And there's no room for debate after we vote on it. So, Mr. Dutton, any comments on that? Or
yeah, just to clarify my stance on this. I think that the town has been remiss in terms of not asking for mitigation in other developments, and I think we should going forward. That said, in this particular project, the mitigation to me is irrelevant in terms of the number of units. I would actually prefer not to see mitigation in this as long as we get a lower number of units. My concern going forward is that the number of units is going to cause more of a problem on Broad Street than we even manage. That's all.
Yeah, I would just echo Mr. Jimmy again. I think the population density there is simply too high, personally.
All right.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll be happy to, since you mentioned me, I'll be happy to work with Mr. Clarkson on updating the agreement.
Yeah, and like I said, just for us to consider, because I think the bones of it are good. It's just, and I think the numbers, if those are the intended numbers, I just want to get that number for the town. I don't want, if we decide we want to go in that direction, I just don't want to get some lesser number, and I just want to have it outlined when payments are due and things like that. That's all. All right. Any other board comments from?
Just one thing, I don't know if Michael can address it at all. If you did a crosswalk, can you have those flashing lights so that when somebody comes up to it and stands there, eventually the drivers might see them and stop?
That's an excellent question, and we're sort of dealing with that in Central Square right now, where we do have some flashing lights. There's some debate as to whether or not those actually work, or if people get numb to those after a short period of time. So that's a question we'd refer back to traffic engineers and seek an opinion there. But yeah, that's a good question.
I'd like one out here on Pleasant Street too.
Mr. Chairman, could I address that issue?
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah, we've done that up on Pleasant Street up at Lakeshore, and at the Access project. And the issue that I have with it is I think it's great when it works, but the problem is it gives a false sense of security to the pedestrian, because they think if that light's flashing, then that somehow that affects the car that's coming along the road. Where the car does not, he doesn't get a stoplight. So I think to some pedestrians, it's a dangerous thing to have, actually, in some cases. But I do like it overall, but I do think it has its negative side. What I do think is a positive design is if where we have street parking on Broad Street, if we could do bump outs in order to bracket some of that parking and shorten the distance where the crosswalk's going to be in order to make that that trip across the street more manageable.
Okay, so I really want to get board feedback on the developers agreement and the TDR so we can, because we're all over the place in terms of what, and I want to give the developer clear direction so everybody's on the same page. So correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Burke and Mr. Romulus, but the underlying density in that area for the special permit criteria is 18 units per acre.
Correct.
All right, and looking at page 2 of your analysis, there's 111,596 square feet. So what the developer could do without providing any additional benefits to the town is the developer could come in without any developer's agreement or asking for any density bonuses, could build 46 units, right? Roughly,
yes.
Roughly 8 of those would be on the east side of the street, and 38 of those would be on the west side of the street, for a total of 46. If we allowed for a TDR without a developer's agreement and a variance, we'd have them put all 46 on one side of the street and have parking on the other side of the street. If we grant the 100% of the density bonus that Mr. Dutton is proposing, which we can approve all of it, parts of it, or none of it, that would get him up to 67 units, either between both sides of the street or on one side of the street, and he's proposing one side of the street.
Correct.
So the developer's agreement gives him roughly 20 to 21 extra units down there for the roughly $1,050,000 in mitigation that he's paying.
Correct.
So I think that if there's issues with the TDR, and if people think that there's too many units there and it's not a public benefit, we need to narrow it down to, one, are we okay with the TDR? And two, how many units, if any, are we okay with over 46? Does that make sense, Ms. Burke?
Yep.
So let's talk about the TDR, and I'll just trying to get feedback from
Well,
the.
I think, I think you're just starting backwards. I think you should start with how many units are you happy with over 46? Because I think that will determine everything else. So I think you need to decide how much density the board is willing to live with there first. I think that should be the first discussion.
So assuming those numbers are not up to an actual numbers,
Correct.
right? There's roughly $1,052,000 in mitigation for three different buckets, so to speak. The first bucket is to acquire and or provide parking.
I don't think you should worry about buckets right now. I think you should just decide
Okay. All right.
what your maximum density is, and then we will figure out the buckets afterwards. I think if the board's not willing to give them any additional density, then this is a whole moot conversation. If the board is willing to give them half of it, then we will have to go back and look at the developers agreement and figure out where we're going to get that half from. I think the board has to decide. The board's decision is the density bonuses. The board's decision is not where those density bonuses come from. It's how much of those density bonuses, how much of the density we're giving them.
Okay.
And whether or not this even works.
Right. So we need to figure out where and that's really why I put my own little agenda today, and that I really want to try to get board consensus on these two policy decisions. So we can go from here. So can the people that have said that the density is too much, is 46 still too much? Is 46 too low? Is 50, where are we in terms of density, do you think, between the 2.5 acres?
I mean, personally, I think density bonuses in general are a bit of a dangerous game, trading, long-term issues for short-term profits for the town. So not particularly in favor of any kind of density bonus with the developer agreement myself.
Okay, Mr. Ajemian? Do we lose Mr. Ajemian?
Donald, that I think he said it well, that the effects of the density bonus may come back to bite us at some point on the developers agreement. I'm first of all, I don't want to come across as being the strong negative person. I am very much in favor of this project, but simply to say that we need this project, that we need businesses, we want people to walk up and down the street, no question about it. I'm definitely in favor of that. The question is, there are a lot of little things that we have to decide and that sometimes aren't thought of. For instance, the crosswalk hasn't been brought up. The left turn, they may be minor, but going forward, they may become major projects. 46 units to me is acceptable. Going above that, possibly. But I do not want to see both the TDR and the density and the developers agreement adding it up to whatever it was, 67 units or whatever it is. That is definitely too high in my mind.
Gene or Steve?
Well, seeing that I missed half of Jennifer's discussion about the transfer of development rights, I'll have to just kind of listen in here. I was thrown out of the internet here.
So what we're trying to decide is the base density for downtown is 46 units per acre. Okay, 46 units total, 18 units per acre. So forget about the transfer development rates right now. Some people feel that that's the 67 is too much. We'd have to grant 21 or 20 extra units down there to get him to the 67. Are you comfortable with 46? Are you comfortable with 67? Where are you in terms of that number? And what are your thoughts on that?
Maybe the 46 would possibly be best, thinking of traffic and everything else going on.
Who have we heard? Have we heard from Mr. Geller?
No, you haven't. I mean, 46 is fine, and I really, kind of torn, but 67 is a lot, but, I am for growth in this town. And revitalization of the town. I don't want to constantly live in a small bubble. We need to move forward with things. Really better the town.
So Ms. Burke, can I ask you this? How about if I ask you, if we did the 26 units per acre just on the left side of the street, right?
West side of the street?
The west side, that would be 52 units.
Mm-hmm. Roughly, yeah.
But in order to get to 52, well, we'd still have to do a transfer development rights, right?
No, well, no, we'd have to, the town manager would have to sit down with the developer and figure out.
I guess what I'm trying to do is there a way to kind of meet in the middle and not have to get a variance? You know what I mean?
So the town manager could sit down with the developer. We work the developer's agreement to propose 26 units per acre on the west side without a transfer of development rights dispersed among the other density bonus options.
But he could use the A across the street for parking.
For parking, he could still use that for parking, yes.
And I'm just throwing that out there as an idea. I'm trying to look for a way to make the project work and not have to get a variance. And also give the developer more units, but keep the people that think 67 is too many happy, that's all. Any other just thoughts from staff or?
Yeah, I'd say I can be okay with the TDR, but the additional density from the developer agreement is too much for me.
I would only add, we've done, and obviously the board can decide what it's going to decide, but we've done a lot of work with and a whole assortment of different developers throughout the last several years. And I can tell you, it's going to be very difficult to find somebody that's going to come in and build at a density, less than 26 an acre. We met with somebody last week, and I was explaining our downtown zoning, and he said that once you're required to put in commercial, once you're which is not not a hot commodity at all, but that's what we're asking, understandably and rightly. You really need the density in order to support that commercial space. So the density isn't, is not picked out of thin air. It's not, designed to maximize or overkill. It's really to make a, what I think is a good project feasible.
With the newfound commercial time place that we're in now, guys, in all honesty, who even knows who, what, and where is going to occupy that space. So we hope that commercial will get used, but
So I like the benefits of the density bonuses, and I actually sat in with Mr. Wood when we decided to add density bonuses, and it was modeled after a couple of different towns, and I always said that I'd be in favor of them if they worked. Just trying to come to a density number. I mean, if we could rework and I'm not trying to strong arm either side, I'm just trying to get a feeling from either side just so we can move forward. If 46 is the underlying density and 67 is where he's trying to get, and we're at 46 and he's at 67, can we meet in the middle and do half the development's agreement?
I don't think that works for me, Patrick.
Board thoughts, so.
But I mean, with all respect to the developer, that's, he's got to make a profit off this. If he doesn't think that works for him, then it doesn't work for him,
Oh, Mr. Chairman,
Sure, Mr. Clarkson.
just to try to move this discussion along, I obviously respect the feedback from Planning Board Member McDonald, but I would ask that the Planning Board consider the fact that we've been discussing this and negotiating with the town in good faith for several years. And so the density bonuses are based on changes that the town council made to the underlying zoning, which encouraged the developers to negotiate these density bonuses. So it's not something that we brought to the table, it's the law of the land in Bridgewater. And in good faith, we negotiated it. And we're very clear with the town from the get-go that the density bonuses were required to make this project financially feasible, particularly given the what we believe now are constraints on commercial property that make the project not a slam dunk in terms of profitability. And I think Mr. Dutton is correct. This is, and I said it at the very, very beginning several months ago, but this is a landmark project for the town, but it's not guaranteed that it moves forward. And I mean, it has to work for the town and for the developer. And so, we negotiated this developers agreement in extraordinary good faith with the town, understanding that these density bonuses were required to make the project financially viable. Jim Pascal has been developing units in Eastern Massachusetts and in Boston for 30 years. And, to have a developer of that caliber be willing to invest $30 million in the downtown says something. And I can tell you at 46 units, you're not going to get another developer to come in here. And the worst outcome is that this land stay vacant for another 8 to 10 years. And so I would urge the planning board members to keep that in mind and lean towards the greater density that makes this project financially viable and allows it to proceed now.
So, any other board comments? So I'm trying to just get some consensus so we can move forward. So we seem to be at a sticking point that I want to try to get over. What do you know? I mean, do you guys have a number in mind that you can work with? I mean, just if the board's concerned that 67 is too much, is there a number that you can come down to in terms of units to help mitigate some of the board's concerns, but still make the project viable? Is that 60? Is that 58? Is it, I guess I'm trying to get a feeling from you guys.
Now, these buildings
Go ahead, Jane.
presented with that number of apartments and that number of parking, right?
I didn't hear your question, Gene. I'm sorry.
These buildings are presented with that number of apartments and the amount of parking that goes with 67?
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So just to the developers, is there a meet in the middle somewhere number with where a couple of members of the board are and where you guys are?
Mr. Chairman, as you well know, we started at 78. We actually were in the 80s. We went down to 78 and we addressed and adjusted some of the demographics of this site. Went from 78 to 75 and now down to 67. On top of that, we've been mitigated with 1-bedroom units. You can't have 33 1-bedroom units amongst a project of this size and ask it to be feasible and viable. It just doesn't work, not even close. But more frustrating than that is that, as Mr. Dutton said earlier, we've negotiated this almost 3 years ago, and have been in constant communication and discussions with the Community Economic Development team, Ian, Michael, as well as Mr. Clarkson and myself, numerous times, Azu as well. We've had numerous meetings, gone over this and over this. I don't understand how this becomes a sticking point at this stage of the game. I'm confused and frustrated by it. So I get it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I understand. It's 55 doesn't work. 67, quite frankly, doesn't work. If you amortize this properly, you find out that it's going to be with me proposing and putting in most money. A bank wouldn't finance this in many cases because it doesn't flow.
Well,
Because I've got 10 years of equity and time into it at this point. So I'm on the edge of trying to make this work. And I think we've all advanced this, but some of the questions that come out and ask that, like, some of these things are new at this stage of the game is again, quite frustrating. So bear with me. I apologize for sharing that frustration with you, but at the same time, I think that some of these things should have been talked about long ago. All these things are in the bylaws of the town of Bridgewater.
No, and I understand your frustration, but at the same time, this is the first engineered site plan that we've seen. So I think that, we should do our due diligence, look at the site plan and ask questions. So.
But we're not talking about site plan. We're talking about units. That has nothing to do with the site plan. We've been on the same unit count for some time. This is at least a third meeting where we've talked about unit counts. I don't understand why we're now talking about whether or not unit counts work, and what the pleasure of the board is at this point. I guess it's either yes or no.
Okay, any other board comments?
Well, a couple things. First of all, again, I just want to repeat myself. I intend to be open-minded about this, and I'm not the 52, whatever number, or 46. It's not concrete in my mind. I'm willing to be open-minded about the possibility of adding more units. But I just want to clarify again that as much as this project has been talked about for whatever, 2 years or whatever, this is the first time the planning board has seen it. It's the first time I've seen it since this fall. So I think, and since we are the approving body, I think we have the right to examine, especially the importance of this project. So I want to see this go forward, and I think we need to look at where we can both meet at some point in terms of making this viable for the developer, and at the same time making it such that 10 years from now, we don't regret, we regret the fact that the buildings are where they are or whatever. I think it can be done. I just think on both sides, we have to be patient and think this out. That's all.
All right, so I'm stuck and I'll ask Ms. Burke for some advice. We need to give the developers some advice on the TDR and some feedback on the developers agreement. So
I think you're stuck in that you can't come to an agreement on the density number. And as you all know, a special permit requires a supermajority vote in favor to be approved, which is a 4 vote. And I don't think you have 4 votes at this time based on what I've heard. So for a higher density, and if the developer can take that information back with his team and discuss it and then make a decision. I mean, we can't make that decision for him. I think the advice you're giving the developer, the comments you're giving back to the developer is that you don't have the support of the planning board for the density he's proposed. The support of the planning board is for a lower density, and he needs to take that and make his decision. whatever that may be. I mean, I think that's what I've heard tonight. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So I guess in order to figure out if he should move forward with a TDL with the ZBA, you see what I mean?
But we're not even there yet. I mean, if you're not even going to give him the density he needs, then that's not even an option.
Well,
right?
let's clarify again, what is the density that, is the density that we originally talked about 67, is that it?
That's the density he's proposed, correct?
Right.
That's with the 21 density bonuses in the developers agreement, correct?
Which have a cost to them attached.
Correct.
They're not free.
46 is the underlying, 67 is the proposed, and roughly, if reworked correctly, $1,050,000 is the amount to the town.
Well, what about if we dropped the developers agreement and just lowered some of the density? Would that make up for it?
Well, I think if we took units away, you'd obviously have to reduce the monetary contribution, yes.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, that's an option, but I think you just heard from the developer that I don't think that works for him, but I'm not going to speak for him, but I think that's what he just said.
That is correct. Thank you, Jen.
Completely understandable position, but yeah, I think the long-term effects from this kind of density would be a negative rather than a positive impact over the course of a decade or two.
You do know that it's now a bylaw in the town that these are available. Density bonuses are available.
Yes, I understand that, but I mean, they still have to be approved, case by case basis. I personally disagree with the town even allowing that in the first place, but that's neither here nor there, and certainly not a something you're to blame for, so to speak. But
so, Mr. McDonald, and I'm just floating this out there, if the developer's agreement was cut in half and the mitigation required by Mr. Pascal was half, could you meet in the middle?
I'd certainly be willing to review it, but out of respect for the developer's time, I don't think he's going to be particularly interested in that. Understandably, it's a tough market from what I'm gathering.
All right.
Let me ask, Mr. Chairman, if I could, if it would be beneficial for the board to review, not specifically review the finances of this project, but review the finances of other projects in perhaps other towns in the area to determine, to see for themselves, see the members, so the members could see for themselves the financial viability of doing 46 versus 67 or whatever the numbers are. I think a little bit of education on that level might be of use. And I will step back and say, from a sort of a 30,000 foot level, it's not, we're not in this to make money off of the developer. And I will say that all day long. This is not a money-making mechanism for the town. What we've negotiated is mitigation. So there's additional increase in density. We've negotiated some I think reasonable mitigation that will benefit the entire town. So it's not how much money we get, that doesn't drive any of this. What drives it for, I think, Jennifer and me and the council is that we need to do something to generate higher density in the downtown area that will support the vibrancy and support the commercial uses that we all want to see. I think that ultimately is the goal here. So if it helps, as I say, if it helps to get a little bit more information, generally about densities in downtown areas, I think that's something that we can bring to the board just for an educational exercise, if it helps.
So just to throw an idea out there, because I don't know how this is going to work anyway, but how about, so Mr. Pascal, you have true one bedrooms and then you have one bedrooms with an office, right? Which are essentially still a 2-bedroom, right?
But they're not 2 bedrooms. They're 1 bedroom with an office.
So,
Okay.
so just hear me out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to come to some agreement here. I don't know if that's gonna fly or not fly with our zoning and the definition of a bedroom, because it's a study, et cetera, is considered a bedroom. All right. So my question is would the board be comfortable with 67 if he made those 1 bedrooms with an office true 1 bedrooms and the 2 bedrooms true 2 bedrooms? Would that give any more? I'm just trying to come to a number and agree.
So Patrick, I see where you're going with that. And I think that I'm actually comfortable with the 67 units. But what they have designed, as far as I know, with my architectural background and everything else, is that really what constitutes the bedroom is a closet in that room. If it's not a closet in that room, it's not considered a bedroom. And if I recall looking at his floor plans, everywhere he said there was 1 unit, there was no closet in that room. So he has designed it as a single bedroom with a office.
But I think we have to get an opinion from Mr. Solari, and hopefully he can provide that after looking at the floor plans, because we do have a definition of it. So, but and I see Mr. Solari's here. I don't want to put him on the spot, but if he's willing to answer it now, based on what you've seen, Mr. Solari, is that office considered a bedroom or is it a bedroom? I don't know if we want to unmute him, if he's here as the building inspector or here as a guest.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you do read the definition, I have to go 2 ways, because I have the building code, which I go by, which defines, like the gentleman just spoke about, the bedroom, it doesn't have a closet, and what a bedroom requirements are as far as height, width, windows, all that. The problem there is that we do have a bylaw definition that the town, and I don't know how old it is, that literally, if you read that bylaw and you read that definition, it basically says any room at all in a house, a apartment that's not either a kitchen, a bathroom, a dining room, or a bathroom is a bedroom. Now I don't know. Again, it was brought to my attention, this definition. I have never, and it's a very strange definition, but it is a definition in our bylaws that, probably should be looked at.
But I guess my question though is if we turn those to his true 1 bedrooms are less square feet. So if we're trying to get him to 67 units and he went to the smaller 1 bedroom footprint, which is a true 1 bedroom, would that work for Mr. Pascal? And would the board be okay with the extra density, or is the extra density still too much? It would reduce some of the mass in the buildings, because I think those true 1 bedrooms are less square feet. Does that?
Are you directing that question at me?
No, I'm no.
Oh, okay.
I'm asking. I'm trying
that has
to.
nothing to do with me.
I'm just trying to get some agreement on where we are in terms of numbers for units.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Pat, is that a question for me?
Well, if the density in the buildings are too big to some people, and you have a true 1 bedroom that's smaller than a 1 bedroom with an office, would you be willing to make those 1 bedrooms with an office true 1 bedrooms to make the footprint a little smaller, get you 67 units, and would the board be okay with that? That would. I'm trying to come to a number here so we can move on.
I really appreciate your efforts. I can see you're struggling with this, and as am I. I'm not quite certain whether that would work. So I would have to look at it. I guess I would leave it open and consider that. But I think at some point, I think about the viability of not just an apartment, but a condominium. And I know down the road, I sell these in town all the time. So I know what works and what doesn't work. And I can tell you from my experience that offices are an absolute must today. So I would tell you, quite frankly, I'd love to have the 2s that would show some sort of office space as well, because it's very, very critically important to integrate that into the layouts today. I don't know that that would, it's just a further handcuff of something that we would be facing, not just for today, but for tomorrow or years to come.
I just add, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make it clear that my mind is still open in terms of how many units we have. In other words, if we have to go as high as 67, that's a possibility. But I do also, I'm saying that from my problem is that my opinion is coming from an opinion of ignorance. I don't know what's viable and what is not viable monetarily. And so Mr. Dutton's point, I think, is a good point. Maybe my suggestion is that maybe that the discussion be made between the participants and come back in the next meeting with a figure that is, it's viable for the developer and also something that may be a little bit less for the town.
Looking at the numbers, it was mentioned that they were started at 78, which was 26 per acre. And then,
But June, just for clarification, that 78 included other properties that already had units on it.
yeah, but no, but what I was going for in terms of is that what it is now is like 22 per acre. So that makes it.
No, it's not.
It's still 26. They removed land. They removed land and buildings that already had units on it.
But they're down to 67 units.
Right, but they only have 2.56 acres. So that's 26 units per acre.
Oh, okay.
So their maxing of the density bonus hasn't changed. It's just there's less area now to receive those units. That's why the number came down.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Well, maybe it would work. And if it's monetarily, construction wise and rental wise, and not knowing what the commercial market is.
All right, so how does the board want to move forward? So
Is there a consensus? Is there a consensus, or can we get a consensus?
So I guess I didn't get it. I know you said you'd have to think about it, but how about if just to try to work out a compromise and get the maximum density bonuses, how about if you use the smaller 1-bedrooms for the 1-bedrooms, which are true 1-bedrooms, and the 2-bedrooms, 2-bedrooms, that would reduce the mass of the building a little. You'd still have the same unit count, and that would get you the max density bonus. Does that work?
I'm not sure that will, Patrick. And again, I appreciate it. I know you're working hard to try to find a common ground, and I appreciate that. I guess if there's a chance that we could ask the board, as it's currently constituted, 67 units, knowing that there's a lot of thought here that this may not go forward. Is it something they want to consider moving forward with or scrapping? I guess I'm not trying to put any push to anybody. I guess just if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I understand. Knowing that, again, we've worked long and hard on this. There's thousands and thousands of hours involved in this from all members across the site. So I think if it's something that doesn't make sense, then it's probably time to go back and readjust the whole bylaw and the whole process in whole, because we've gone through it all. I think we have. So I would just respectfully request that what we're proposing here tonight, is that something that they think they could possibly endorse in its current state, or would they rather see nothing there? I think that's the real question. And
Well,
I think Jennifer was right. We've got to get a unit count in some case, or just, we're kind of pushing.
So there's other things that we need to get done on the site in terms of You know, we still need to have those test bits done and things like that. But so, I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think everybody wants to see a project there. I think we just want to see the best project. So I'm trying to figure out where we can. I mean, somebody give me a number on the board and let's.
Mr. Driscoll, can I just
Sure.
interject for 1 second? I just want to point out to the board that just down the street, we have a project under construction known as Borough Place Apartments, recently approved in the town, that actually is, I believe, 29 units per acre. So it would be, that is denser than what is being proposed here on this project. So I just want the board to be aware of that.
Jen, can I also ask, was there any mitigation there? Was there any money to the
That
town?
was approved under Mass General Law, Chapter 40B. So
No benefit to the town.
no benefit to the town.
Well,
Right, so no money.
The affordable housing is considered a benefit to the town.
All right, so.
That's the most popular
Just to
concept.
clarify my opinion, I wanted to make
Sure.
it clear. I think, as I said all along, I think the project is, I'd like to see a much smaller project. But I will not vote in the negative because of 67 units. There are other issues involved, but I'm just saying my personal vote will not be a negative if there are 67 units. I'd like to see, if possible, a smaller number, but I will not stop the project based on the 67 units. Just to be clear.
Okay, you know, I'm okay with the 67 units. I understand Michael and you know, other comments, and I get it. I would like to see, though, I mean, I would like to see the 1-bedroom units be 1-bedroom units and the 2-bedroom units be 2-bedroom units. I think essentially those 2-bedroom units could, you know, become a 2nd bedroom very easily. And I don't know how we monitor and enforce that or whatnot. And I think the parking is based off of that 1- and 2-bedroom count. We only require 1 parking space per unit. And you have you have a myriad of a mix of 1- and 2-bedroom units. So I would be okay with the 67 units with the mitigation, as long as the 1-bedrooms were 1-bedrooms, true 1-bedrooms, and the 2 true 2-bedrooms. And in the hopes that we can get Mr. Pascal to that, 67 unit count.
Can I ask Jen a question? Jen, is the building that's 52 units down the street, is that resigned to just 1- and 2-bedroom units, or are there 3s and 4s in there?
Because it was done under Chapter 40B, they had to do some 3 bedrooms because it's considered family housing.
But isn't there a lot of 3 bedrooms and some 4s in there?
I don't know the number count off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I believe there's some of all of those. And it being, me being restrained to only 1- and 2-bedroom units makes this project significantly less financially viable. And I've tried to eat that as we move forward. We originally had this plan for a lot more 2-bedroom units. And then we worked through the bedroom count issues and the unit quantities as defined by the bylaw. So we've mitigated and brought this down to 67, but 33 of them are 2-bedroom, 34 are 1. There isn't 34 1-bedrooms probably in the rest of the town. Never mind.
And I'd be okay with, as Mr. Ajemian said earlier, and I'm just trying to come to a compromise, I would be okay with less mitigation and more, in a way to try to get you where you want to be. I'd be okay with a little bit less mitigation. And have those units be true 1-bedrooms and true 2-bedrooms to comply with our ordinance. And that may, the smallest square footage of those 1-bedrooms may reduce the mass of the buildings, and that may help, put everybody, I'm looking for a compromise, and I think that.
Can I also add that amongst the commercial space, it is an absolute wild card right now, whether it will sit vacant or be utilized in years to come. I can tell you last year that was less of a case where it is now. So it is today significantly less viable than it was a year ago, based upon the current commercial viability of this economy.
I would totally agree with you on that. Yeah, I would think it would be a question, even if we didn't have the pandemic, filling stores up along Broad Street like that.
And I do understand the benefit of the office, but I also understand somebody looking at that to rent and will see the other room. All you have to do is put in some kind of a freestanding unit to make it a closet, make it beneficial. But as an office, yeah, it's a small unit with a separate office space because many people are working from home. That's a bonus. But then if somebody decides to use it as a bedroom, now you're short on parking, which has nothing to do with you. That's because they did that.
As I stated before, I'm fine with 67 units. That number's fine with me. As far as the size of a true one bedroom unit, I guess I would leave that up to Mr. Solari to let us know that if it's true or not. I'm not quite sure if you remove a couple square feet from a unit just to satisfy, bring down the mass of the building. I don't really see the gain of doing that. And I know we're trying to find a happy medium. And that's about where I stand. I mean, I think they've come a long way. The improvement of the project has come quite far along from where they first started. I first saw this. That's about where I stand, Patrick.
Just to be entirely forward too, like my issue was not with the offices and the one bedroom. I'm sure those would become bedrooms at some point too. I mean, let's be realistic. But my issue is still mostly with the unit count, not whether the one bedrooms have an office that somebody might put a hammock in or something, you know.
Okay. So four of us are okay, are open to continuing with 67 and what, Michael, you're still not comfortable with that, correct? Then we all won't have to agree.
Yeah.
Now, and I'm okay with the 67, but I want Mr. Solari to review, our zoning and make sure those one bedrooms comply. If they comply with our zoning, then there's nothing I can do about it. If they don't comply, I want them to be one bedroom units, that's all. The TDR, where are we with the TDR? Do we want him to go to ZBA and ask for relief in lifting the bonus cap so that we can perform a TDR? Did everybody
Mr. Chair,
freeze?
that I think if you are okay, and I don't expect everybody to be very comfortable, but if you're okay with the 67 units in some form, then I think it would be wise to refer Mr. Pascal to the ZBA for that variance.
Well, that's, so assuming, is there anybody that has an objection to having the units all on one side on the board?
I'm fine with that personally.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, so we're okay with considering a TDR. We want Mr. Pascal to pursue lifting the cap with the assumption that the 12 or 13 units that would be on one side of the street would move to the other. There'd be a development restriction in perpetuity on the other side with some public benefit. Personally, I'd like to see that parking lot completely reconstructed. I mean, if this is a new project, that's part of that project, I'd like to see, new binder, drainage, etc. And I would hope that could all be done prior to coming back to us. I also would like to see that developers agreement tightened up. We talked about that. I think if there is money proposed, we should get what we want, and he shouldn't have to pay any more. That's, if there's a number agreed upon, it should be that agreed upon number. And there should be timing and whatnot. We need a lighting plan, the crosswalk adjusted or addressed, a phasing plan. And I know I've had other councilors and other residents ask me, we should think about, if we do go forward with this project, other conditions. I know the site is in deplorable condition now. Is there something we need cleaned up right away? And how do we do that? So maybe the town could work on that with us as well. So.
Faster we approve it, Patrick, the closer it'll look like a $30 million project.
So are we also looking for building? I saw this hardy plank, and are we looking for color schemes and things like that still? Is that still an outstanding item?
We've never had that conversation in my knowledge.
Mr. Romulus, that was a comment you made in one of the documents, correct?
I'm not gonna have people tell me what color I gotta do.
I would have to revisit the document to confirm that.
I believe in the past, we have looked at building drawings, design, everything.
So I think just maybe the staff can touch base with that. My thing is, I'm okay with the 67 units. I know that we adopted that bedroom regulation back in 2016 when we looked at how other towns did it. I know Easton had a bedroom definition when they built condos and whatnot. And it's to prevent offices from being developed and turned into bedrooms, et cetera, especially where there's a reduction in parking. So just to be upfront and everything else, I'm okay with the 67 units. I would like to see those 1-bedroom units be 1-bedroom units and the 2 bedrooms be 2 bedrooms, and not have the office that could be utilized as a bedroom, especially since everywhere else in town we require 2 bedrooms per apartment unit, and the commercial requirement. We're reducing the parking requirement. We're allowing shared parking. We're only requiring 1 parking space per unit. So I think it's important to have successful businesses downstairs. We need to have available parking. We're considering the shared parking. I'm okay with it, but we don't even know if that works yet, because if a restaurant's down there, which hopefully there is, and you have residents coming home at night, that shared parking doesn't work as well as if you had offices there and people worked during the day and then people came home at night. So, I'm okay with the 67 units. I'm okay with the transfer of development rights. I just personally want to see the 1-bedrooms, 1-bedrooms, and the 2 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and not play games with offices or suites or lofts or whatever we're going to call them, So,
Mr. Chairman?
Sure, go ahead.
Seeing as how you spent a lot of time dealing with that whole issue about the number of units, is it conceivable that you could take that to a vote tonight so that issue's off the table?
Until they they can only vote what the zoning would allow tonight. They can't vote anything that would be in excess of the zoning allowance. So if they were going to vote for 67 units, they couldn't do that tonight because that's not allowed under zoning.
So does it make
I'm not going to change I gave you my opinion. How I want the units to be laid out. I'll vote for 67 units if they're laid out that way. So.
I know. Okay. So what I'm seeing here is there's a sequence issue here, because what you're really saying is you really can't vote to finish this process until he goes to the zoning board.
Correct.
Yep.
So
he has to get the density. He has to get the bonus.
The variance.
We could have done this months ago.
So you can't vote. It just seemed to me that you could do a conditional vote, which would then allow him to take that step to go to zoning board. And then while he's doing that, he can fulfill all the other requirements that you needed that we've listed out tonight.
You can't get a special permit that needs a variance.
He
No, he needs both.
Right, but the planning board can't act on a project that doesn't comply with zoning. If it doesn't meet zoning, they need to get relief first.
Okay, so I kind of feel like he should have been instructed to go to zoning board first. Because if the density is the issue and it makes or break the project, then he spent a lot of time and effort here in the planning when he really needs to get zoning board to say yes. And
Well,
just go, and
I
then
don't-
to say zoning board says no.
I don't think the density is the issue. We have the right to grant 67 units, but not on one parcel. So the density is not the issue, it's where the units are. And if he, right now, we could grant 67 units, but we can only grant 52 on the west side and the remainder on the east side. That's all we can do. If he wants to combine those, in order to combine those, we need to have the cap lifted. Because the way that we allow 26 units per acre, they're non-contiguous parcels. So we need the cap to be lifted so that we can perform the TDR.
Okay,
So the density is not the issue. It's how to move those extra, it's how to move units from one side of the street to the other. We don't have a mechanism to do that. And that's,
okay, so he goes to the zoning board and the zoning board may say, and the zoning board potentially could say no?
well, then he has to put his units on both sides of the street. He can still have the 67 units. Am I
So
correct?
now I'm back
Mr.
to redesigning the whole project again. Engineering, architecturals.
Well, I think tonight we can only do what we can do, right? So
Yeah. No, I
I
get it.
I think we gave you feedback that, you know, from where the 5 of us stand, so you have that feedback.
I
You have the
appreciate it.
feedback that 4 out of 5 of us seem to be comfortable with the 67 units per acre. You have my feedback about, I'm comfortable with the 67 units per acre as long as the bedroom rule is adhered to. I'm comfortable with the TDR. I think the other members are comfortable with the TDR, including Michael. I don't want to speak for anybody. But in order to make all this happen now, we need to have the cap lifted because you're exceeding 26 units per acre on the other side.
So right now, you,
TDR.
And in the meantime, that's why I said earlier in the meeting, Mr. Silva, we can have the lighting plan completed. We can have the engineering of the parking lot. We can have that binder course evaluated. We can have the drainage redone. We can have all that in the works, you know, why the CBA process is going on, and have the developers agreement retweaked and then wrap it up.
so your continuation is gonna be for 4 to 6 weeks or something like that.
Ms. Burke?
How long does it take to get into the zoning board and get a decision?
Oh, how long when can you get an application into me? I mean, they have a meeting on January 27th, but I don't think you'd make that for advertising at this point. So then their next meeting is February 10th. Yeah, you wouldn't make the 27th. So February 10th would be the earliest we could get you on.
Okay.
All right, so I
But
just want
just,
to get,
if I could, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman, just so that it's clear to Jim what happens next. So if the earliest date that he can be on the ZBA is February 10th, and if he's so fortunate that on that night that they actually vote to approve, that approval will not go on record until presumably as much as 14 days from that. And then there would be 20-day appeal period from that decision.
Correct, but he can come back to the planning board during the appeal period.
No, he can't.
Sure he can. Why? We let people build during the appeal period at their own risk. So why wouldn't we let them come back to the planning board for additional approvals?
Because you can't give them the approval until it clears the appeals.
That's not what I said. I said they have to have a vote from the zoning board of appeals. That's all I said.
I'm sorry, you said what?
He has to have a vote from the zoning board of appeals. I didn't say it had to clear the appeal, period. It's at his own risk, but he can do it.
No, but if he gets an approval from the zoning board of appeals, it doesn't mean anything until it clears the 20-day appeal period.
Right, but he can still work towards getting the planning board approval. If it gets appealed, everything halts and nothing happens. If it doesn't get appealed, he's that much more ahead of the game.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure Jim's clear on what his risk is. Or what his timeline is. You can't vote, this board can't vote until that 20-day appeal period is over.
And
Well,
Jen, you're,
I would disagree with that because the 20-day appeal period right now is tolled, isn't it, Ms. Breck? Because of the,
No, they ended the tolling December 1st.
oh, they did, okay.
so I'm not back before you people. Should we move forward until March something?
Most likely.
Okay.
Or maybe March 3rd would be the best meeting.
Is there a way? I mean, we want all this other stuff to move in parallel, Ms. Breck. So I would imagine that Mr. Antonero is pretty available to do those test pits and to get that drainage going. And I mean, this is all assuming we're getting a ZBA approval. So, you know, so it would be nice if all that could be done in parallel. The landscape plan could be updated to meet the site plan. I know the site plan still has some data from other parcels on it. If that could just have everything, you know, have the developers agreement reworked with Mr. Dutton, so we actually get the $1,052,000 in mitigation and not up to $1,052,000 in mitigation. And maybe allow for some more flexibility in that developers agreement. You know, if we can't purchase the house out back, maybe it can be used for parking. If we don't use all the money in the War Memorial, it can be used in the common. You know, things like that, so we can really improve downtown. It'd be nice if we could do all that in parallel with this ZBA. So when we do come back in March, everything's done. We have the ZBA approval and everything, all the plans jive and are tight, and we have a lighting plan, et cetera, and a phasing plan. And
That assumes that Jim wants to spend that money with being at risk at the zoning board decision. Otherwise, he's not going to start until after the 10th.
Well, I mean, the zoning board's not going to give many more units. The zoning board is just going to give them the ability for some of those
They
units.
got to, but they have to say yes.
Correct. To move the units across the street.
Right. And so if he's going to try to make this timeline move and say, you're saying do things in parallel, Jim needs to be able to spend money with still at risk that the zoning board approval will take place on the 10th. Otherwise, he's not going to start work on it until the 10th or possibly even after the appeal period. That's really Jim's call.
I think that's where we're at because, you know, we were trying to figure out a mechanism how to make this TDR work, and there's not a mechanism to do it. So the TDR only allows us to go to 26. So we have to change the TDR cap to make it work.
I just want to make sure Jim's clear on it. That's all. Jim, you clear?
I am, Larry.
Okay.
And I think I don't want to condition a parking lot. And we've never done that. I know people have said we have. I don't know when we've ever conditioned a site plan on drainage that hasn't been approved. So I would like to have the drainage evaluated, designed, everything along with the parking lot improvements for that parcel A, so that we can wrap that up. I mean, that's part of the planning board's job, is to review drainage. I don't want to condition that. So
I don't want to debate that, but in the past, you have numerous times you have voted to approve it subject to addressing the comments of the town engineer.
right, but I agree with that, Mr. Silva. But we had a design in hand, we had test pits in hand, and the only thing the only thing that wasn't done was the final review by the town engineer. But we've never had. We have no design in front of us.
this was an approved parking lot in 92, and I understand there's a difference. But we're talking about drainage in a parking lot.
Okay, well,
I think what Mr. Columbotus said earlier too is very important. This is the first project of this kind we're doing. We don't want to set any precedent that could come back to bite us later.
right.
Understood.
Well,
So when would you be continuing to?
Les, do you have the calendar? I'm sorry. Les, you're on mute.
Could be either the 3rd or the.
Yep.
March 3rd is the first meeting in March.
Okay. Does that work for everybody involved?
Does that get you past the appeal? Excuse me. Does that get you past the appeal period if it's voted on the 10th?
Well, so can I just ask a question, Ms. Burke? So to keep it moving, right? We could always hear it, right? Because I imagine this is going to be a pretty detailed decision letter with phasing and everything that needs to be incorporated and things incorporated from our next meeting into it. We could always have a March 3rd meeting. If the board felt they had enough information, even if the appeal period wasn't over, we could close the public hearing with, and start to deliberate and give Ms. Burke some feedback and Mr. Romulus some feedback as far as a decision letter that can be prepared. And after the appeal period, we could vote on the decision letter and vote on the project, correct?
Yes, but if the ZBA votes on the 10th, if I'm counting correctly, if I file it with the town clerk on the 11th, the appeal period would end on the 4th. So it's right in that time period.
All right, so we could close the public hearing, draft the decision letter and vote on it in the next meeting in March if everything was in and acceptable. Correct?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I didn't know you were asking me that question. I thought it was just a statement.
All right. Before we move on, is there any more public comment or would anybody from the public like to speak?
Oh, Dr. Hunt had one more thing he wanted to say.
Very, very quickly, and thank you for this discussion. It's great. Regarding the parking lot, I think it would be really great, a public benefit, if that parking lot would have electricity put in, some public restrooms put in, and a food truck location. So that would be something that would really improve that area. So anybody that wants to sit outside and eat in the summertime, it would be good. I think to go to a comment on this public safety and the crosswalk, I think the onus is on the town to provide what the town believes would be the safest way to go forward with that. And the last point, there was an economic development plan developed by OCPC back in 2015 or 16. 16. And I don't know if the developer has seen that, but I've had some recent conversations and on the comprehensive master plan committee meeting, one of the things that was said is that with people not going into Boston so much anymore, that could change the economics so that they go to the quality stores in local towns. So I think if you haven't seen that economic development article, it looks at the draw area for Bridgewater, potential draw. If you haven't seen that, I would like that to be sent to them so that they could actually look at that and think of the current situation, COVID situation, and what the future might look like. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, there's one comment that we received from a Mr. Andrew Stewart.
Oh.
It reads.
I see he's on, Mr. Ramos. Do you want to invite him to speak or?
He messaged me and said that if I could read the comment.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yes, so it reads, the bedroom definition says that any room intended for regular use by all occupants of the dwelling shall not be considered a bedroom. If it is a one-bedroom apartment, all occupants will be able to regularly use the office and it shouldn't be considered a bedroom.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Mr. Wood?
Take myself off on mute. So I want to bring up a point about the one bedroom again. I liked, Andrew Stewart found that. I don't think that Andrew should have found that. I think that, our own town staff should have known that, should have discussed that, should have been vetting that. But I'd written in my letter about anti-child rule. So I believe that the reason the zoning is set up as it isn't about parking. It's about children and students and trying to avoid having too many of each in these residents. Because if you look at, the limitations, no 3-bedroom, no 4-bedroom, that's an anti-child rule that, is directly targeted toward families, not single people or couples or retired people. So I'm hoping that the process here, with the office, which I'm sitting in my office, I've been working from here for about 10 months now, works out. But I got to say also, and I'll direct this to Michael Dutton, it's frustrating. This whole process is frustrating. We got together with staff back in August to work out issues that would prohibit the planning board from being able to reach a decision. We talked about a list of items that the developer needed to provide. And yes, there was some delay in some of those. And there were comments about, pulling off the 45-foot height in the front to make it look more acceptable. The process to get there was that Peter Columbatis, myself, Michael Dutton, and some staff, and a member of the planning board got together to try to make it so that we could revitalize downtown by getting more people downtown. And I got to say, it's, I think Jim and others have been nice about it, but I got to say I'm very disappointed. It's a process here. It seems like everybody's trying to put 18 eggs in a 12-egg carton, trying to get parking and green space and whatnot. And the fact that, the team has to now go ZBA, and that wasn't discussed in August, and it wasn't discussed in September, and it wasn't discussed in December, and now only in January that has become an issue, has to be extremely frustrating. It was the type of thing that we talked about in August. Is there anything else that needs to be done to make this project successful? Is there anything on the list? I have no skin in the game. I know the developer and his team are trying to maximize profit. I also know that one of the emphasis of the change of 19 was to bring more vitalization downtown. And, you have things like the 60% rule, to make hopefully the commercial space more viable. But, things like the parking lot is a benefit. Things like the, some of the other road enhancements that we may need to do as a town are a benefit. Getting people downtown is a benefit. And I think there have been a lot of changes here. I'm not asking you to make a quick decision, but to me, as a guide in this, I think that there's been a lot of things that at the last minute become an issue, and the ZBA is just one of the others. So I'm venting my frustration because I know Jim and his team won't, and others won't. But I think as a town, we need to do a better job at organizing these pieces. Because if we don't, we won't have any downtown revitalization at all. We'll be looking at Old Friendlies for the next 25 years. I don't want that. You don't want that. I think we need to figure this out quickly. And, hopefully with the schedule now, that we can adhere to the schedule and reach a solution that works for everybody. So, I do appreciate everybody's time, but we gotta stop getting these gotchas at the last minute. When we could have predicted them back in August. So thank you, and thanks.
Any other comments?
I would add one is there a way to create a quorum at ZBA and put this before the board in a more timely fashion, or is it those are the dates? My date for finishing this.
I think it's an advertising issue, Ms. Brock, correct? I mean, there's a meeting between now and the one we're proposing, but you can't meet advertising, correct?
Correct. I could potentially ask them, reach out to them and see if they could schedule a special meeting, but I'd have to check with all of them and find out if they're available.
But we have to set a date tonight to continue this.
Correct. Yeah, you have to set your date tonight, so you have to kind of go based off their schedule.
Try to set a special meeting tonight in case that happens, and we can always continue it if it doesn't.
Like, yeah,
Well,
potentially, yeah.
we could just go to our second meeting in February then.
Yeah, that would make more sense.
And if it's not ready, we could continue it.
You could certainly do that.
Les, what is our second meeting in February?
February 17th,
What's that?
February 17th.
Mr. Chairman, that won't work no matter what date he can get, that Jennifer can get ZBA.
Right, we have to go, I was doing the math. So we'll keep it on March 3rd. Ms. Beck?
Okay.
All right, do we have any other board discussion on this at this point?
Motion to close.
Do we have a motion to continue to March? Did you say 3rd, Ms. Dorr?
Yeah.
Yes.
At 6:30 PM?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to continue to that date and time.
Okay.
All right, so it's a roll call vote. If there's no discussion, is there any discussion?
I'm sorry, who seconded it?
I did.
Ray?
I did.
Thanks, Ray.
Mr. Geller?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Guarino?
Yes.
Mr. Jemian?
Yes.
And I'm here as well. Okay. All right, so hopefully we can have everything in and done for March 3rd, including the parking lot improvements and drainage and all that stuff, and have it reviewed by Mr. Antonero. Mr. Silva? I think that's
Well, I don't know his availability, but we will do our best.
Okay.
If he's available, then we should be able to get it done.
All right, do we have a, I'm losing my mind. On our agenda, Mr. Ramos, do you have the agenda?
Yeah, so I did add minutes on the agenda to be approved. However, I did not include it in the package that was sent out. So we'll have to include that in the next meeting.
Okay, that's fine. Is there any, Ms. Barker, at the last conversation we had, and I know we didn't talk about it, I just thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
Never mind, we can talk about it next meeting, that's fine.
Okay.
Do you guys have anything prepared for a director's report?
Not this evening.
Okay, any board liaison reports?
No.
No, okay. All right, so anything else from any board members before we have a motion to adjourn?
No.
No?
Holiday,
Ashley,
that's,
did you stay with us?
Astrid did.
Did you draft your letter of resignation?
No, not yet. And more interested than before.
This is why it's hard for Mr. Dutton to recruit people.
No, it's good. I enjoyed it. So.
All right, so, all right. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn or did we already do that?
No, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Just for discussion. What do we have on for the next meeting, Ms. Dorr?
Let me see. That's January 20th. Right now, we have vote on the acceptance of Stonehill Lane. And I believe we will be having an A&R on Pine Street.
Okay. So pretty easy meeting. All right. Did we lose Ray?
Here, but I'm going.
You made it.
Uh,
All right. Well, good night, everyone.
Good night.
You-
Good night,
Did you
everyone.
take, you take your
roll
vote to
call.
adjourn?
Oh, no, we didn't.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, roll call. So, Mr. Geller,
Yeah.
do you want to stay tonight?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Mrs. Garino,
Yes.
did Mr. Jemian leave us?
No, I'm here, but
He's here.
I'm going though.
All right, yes, to adjourn?
Yes.
Did I forget anybody?
Mr.
Mr.
McDonald.
McDonald.
Oh, Mr.
Mrs.
McDonald.
Rojas.
You know, it's because you don't have a picture. I forgot about you.
Yeah, yes,
Mr.
I don't have,
McDonald?
yes.
And I'm a yes. All right,
Ms.
good night, everyone.
Rojas.
Oh, yes.
Good night.
Have a good
Good
night.
night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.